Hi, I'm Katrina Mirpuri from the Evening Standard and welcome back to the Standard podcast. Please hit follow and leave a rating. On today's episode, we're celebrating South Asian Heritage Month. The celebration runs from July 18th to August 17th and aims to celebrate all things surrounding South Asian culture. In the capital, South Asians make up 20% of the population, and it's safe to say that Londoners love to embrace the culture, whether it's through delicious food or through its vibrant music. One of the events I feature in my article is the UK's first competitive eating chaat challenge, where guests are invited to eat as many pani puris as they can in 2 minutes. I did this with my family and my dad is top of the leaderboard and I ate 34 pani puris in 2 minutes. Quite impressive. Earlier today, I caught up with Vivek Singh, Indian chef and restaurateur and owner of the Cinnamon Collection, and we talked about all things South Asian heritage. Hi Vivek, thank you so much for joining us on the Standard podcast. So you're actually speaking to us from India.
That's right.
Last week we were both at Cinnamon Bazaar. You hosted the chaat challenge and I took part in that challenge. Do you want to tell me a little bit about the chaat challenge in general for the listeners who don't know about it?
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, there are two distinct things now. One is chaat, of course, and the other is a chaat challenge. Chaat challenge is for people who know chaat and love chaat and have had some association with it. In essence, as far as the genre of dishes go, chaats are these predominantly vegetarian, small plates of deliciousness that would want you to pick up your plate and lick. Literally translated from Hindi, chaat means to lick your plate. Chaats are something that you find in India in pretty much every market, especially in the north of the country. Every market, every square, every bazaar, will have these people that will be selling these sweet, sharp, tangy, just brilliant explosions of flavor. And it's quite a specialized thing and also predominantly vegetarian, but also very accessible. And despite it being so accessible, it's also very highly customizable. So everybody has a way they love their chaat. Some like it sweet, some like it spicy, some like it sour, hot. And everybody has this sort of ultimate level of customization that they like. So anyway, people have very fond memories and a lot of people in London said to us that, they would love something like that. And that's what Cinnamon Bazaar does. It kind of celebrates those memories and those experiences that people cherish. And so we came up with this idea of a chaat challenge and it just attracts chaat lovers up and down, from up and down the country.
Absolutely. Just for people that aren't aware, the challenge invites people to eat as many pani puris as they can in 2 minutes. The current record is 40, set by my dad. I did 34. I opted for a mix of a little bit of like tamarind and sort of like sweet and sour. But I'm curious to know, Vivek, how do you like your pani puri?
Oh, I like mine more sweet than sour. From years of experiencing it and eating it, not competitively necessarily, but eating a lot of it, I found that my composition kind of takes to the slightly sweeter liquid much better.
The chaat challenge actually falls really conveniently during South Asian Heritage Month, and I'm curious to know, what does South Asian Heritage Month mean to you? Why is it important?
I have lived now in the UK, in London, for the best part of 23 years, and even in this short duration of 22, 23 years, I can't help but notice how much more we are celebrating the things that, a few years ago would have been considered almost impossible to be talking about chaat and, doing. I love the fact that there is so much more, and not just the mainstream, it's not just sort of a Holi and a Diwali that people talk about, or just light some symbolic lights in the parliament at Diwali time. But I think it's just become so much more a part of the mainstream conversation. The fact that we are having conversations like this and we are having celebrations like this just, goes to say that we are now well and truly on the way to having very mainstream conversations about the things that we love and that matter to the South Asian people.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. This year's theme is titled Free to Be Me, and people have been interpreting that theme in so many different ways. But How would you express this theme on a personal level? Free to be me. How have you done that?
Yeah, it actually, to be honest with you, there is an element of free to be me in so many things that the cinnamon collection and I have done in the last 24 years. One of my main sort of gripes with the Indian restaurant food and with the food that was being showcased in Indian restaurants 20 years ago was a caricature of something that really only existed in people's figment of imagination, because it was not something that I had experienced having grown up in India. And not just about food, it was about so many things. It was about the imagery that was used to describe the country. And, I mean, I had moved late in sort of, in the year 2000. And having grown up in Delhi and some of the metropolitan cities in the 90s, I was no stranger to. I was very familiar to a lot of the energy, the bustle, the youth, the aspirations, the tall buildings, and the modernization that was going on in the Indian society. And yet, in the UK, the images that were being still used to describe India was still probably a snake charmer, a sadhu, a Taj Mahal, and perhaps some tigers. And actually, there was so much more to the country and so much more to the people. And um, and so in that sense, we wanted to showcase food that was truly reflective of the kind of aspiration and the boldness of the youth and the color and the culture as I had experienced, in a contemporary way. There was an element of the free to be me in everything that we have done. So we took a lot of these sort of, very good quality British produce and gave it the spice treatment, or we got inspired by traditional Indian dishes and spicing and cooking techniques and combine that with the very best local seasonal produce. And in doing so, we were trying to give it an expression of who we were. And it's now we're seeing this in so many different ways. We're celebrating Durga Puja, whether it's Bengali people, celebrating the 10 days of the arrival of the goddess Durga in the autumn, or, what Cinnamon Kitchen in the city does with the Holi. So we bring the festival of colors and this absolute riot of color and madness. When we celebrate Holi and we distribute sweets, and people, literally let their hair down and have a lot of fun. Or it's something as contemporary and or as just fun and not necessarily competitive as celebrating the humble chaat from the streets of India.
Right, let's go to a quick break. Coming up in part 2.
Our civilization has been around for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 years, and pretty much uninterrupted. And we have absorbed and imbibed so many different influences from different parts of the world, some good, some bad, but never really been eliminated.
Make sure to hit follow on this podcast and give us a rating. What makes you proud to be Indian?
Oh, everything. What makes you proud to be Indian? I think, if you think of it as we're not just a country. I think, we're a nation of so many diverse faiths and so many diverse sort of people. We have so many languages. In fact, there's the whole context of speaking about Indian food per se is such an oxymoron, because you can't really describe the food of an entire subcontinent in any one style. So, with our languages, with our cultures, with our traditions, with our religions, with our so many, different influences from so many different years, it's a melting pot like very little else. And the fact that, our civilization has been around for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,000 years, and pretty much uninterrupted. And we have absorbed and imbibed so many different influences from different parts of the world, some good, some bad, but never really been eliminated. And I think, that kind of just shows that we as a nation, we as a civilization have never gone out and invaded another country, or we've never actually gone out and imposed our beliefs on anyone. The true reflection of a multicultural society or secularism, or pluralism, as we know. I think, these things We don't talk about it enough. I think, India and Indians and South Asians celebrate this pluralism better than most other people in the world.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, being in the UK, South Asians are everywhere. We're the biggest ethnic minority in the UK. What role do you think South Asian culture plays in modern Britain?
The roots are in Britain are much deeper, much deeper than most of us may kind of assume at first. Obviously, this whole connection between the British and Indians go back so many years, close to 300 odd years now, and in varying degrees, and lots of different stages at which different people have been affected, sometimes not in the best kind of way. But there are different environments in which people have made these journeys and made these sort of transitions, where they might have moved from one country to another, and under very different circumstances they moved from a second to a third, or towards Britain. I mean, a lot of the population, the South Asian population, has moved under very different things, and therefore their experiences might have been different. I'm not entirely sort of unaware of the challenges that the young people or the South Asian people that grew up in the 70s or in the 80s they went through, and the kind of discrimination or the kind of other experiences which may have been far from being positive. And those were the challenges that generation kind of endured in India. I feel on the whole and in the main, we are so much more celebrated. We're so much more kind of seen as a population now than we ever were. I mean, that's certainly been my personal experience. And I think, we seem to be a lot more vocal, a lot more visible, and we seem to be so much more comfortable in our skin. I mean, that's my feeling. Would you agree?
I agree, yeah, definitely. So much more so than years ago. Even in the last 10 years, I mean, I've seen a change. Growing up, it wasn't really cool to be Indian, but now I think it's cool to be Indian.
Yeah. And so you asked me, Katrina, why are you proud to be Indian? I'm proud to be Indian because I think it's very cool to be Indian.
What is your favorite thing about your culture?
Wow, that's a really, it's a very deep question. What is my favorite thing about my culture? I kind of live and breathe the world of food. And so I suspect the fact that I can celebrate pretty much a different festival pretty much each day of the week, each day of the year. There are more festivals in India, which is what I say in my book that I wrote a few years ago about Indian festival feasts. And so we went through a list of all the festivals that are celebrated, right from Pongal on the 14th of January, right until the end, which is New Year's Eve on the 31st of December. And every festival that goes through it, the fact that I can celebrate a different festival, comes from a different community, and have completely, something completely different. Not just eat for myself, but also offer to my customers and my guests. And people are always fascinated by this sort of, this rich tapestry, this rich diversity that we have of so many different influences. People love it. I love it. I love the fact that there can be so many expressions of it. I suspect the pluralism of our culture is probably the bit that I love most.
And that's The Standard. Check out my London South Asian Heritage Month guide over at standard.co.uk or via a very helpful link in the show notes. This podcast will be back on Monday at 4 p.m. Have a lovely weekend.